So last class we are discussing about the introduction to genetic algorithm. So basically we have discussed like why we should use genetic algorithm and what are the normally genetic algorithm comes under optimization. Solving genetic algorithm is primarily used to solve optimization problems, but the traditional optimization techniques cannot be used for most of the real world problems. So in such cases, we go for genetic algorithms, right? So, so not only genetic algorithm, there are different type of algorithms. Some of these algorithms were inspired from biological process, and some of these algorithms were inspired from physical process. Okay. So the other algorithms includes fuzzy logic, particle swarm optimization, ant colony optimization. All these are basically optimization techniques. Genetic algorithm is also an optimization technique, but this is applied to those problems which are really very complex to solve and which involve so many parameters. And if you try to apply the traditional optimization techniques, then the cost involved may be very high, or it may be very much time consuming, right? So these things we have discussed, and also we have discussed the basic working of a genetic algorithm. What are the things that generally happens in a genetic algorithm uh, to identify a optimized solution. Okay. So in genetic algorithm, initially we start with the initial population, where each individual in initial population is nothing but one possible solution, right? And and there are three types of genetic algorithms available. These are simple genetic algorithm, steady state genetic algorithm, and messy genetic algorithm. So we will have an overview on the first two types of genetic algorithm, the simple genetic algorithm and steady state genetic algorithm now. Okay, we will not be discussing much about messy genetic algorithm, but these are the three categories of genetic algorithm available. So we'll try to understand briefly with a flow chart what is simple genetic algorithm and what is steady state genetic algorithm. So this is the flow chart corresponding to simple GA, that is simple genetic algorithm. So so if you recall the normal genetic algorithm, what we have discussed in the last lecture, in any genetic algorithm what happens, we start with the initial population and then we pick up some random individuals which is a solution, and then we check whether the criteria convergence criteria is met or not. If convergence criteria is not met, then we create new population, I mean we create new offspring by techniques like crossover, mutation, or inversion, or by involving all these three methods. And then again, once the new offspring is created, again we check whether convergence is met or not. If convergence is not met, then once again we will identify a mating pair and we will create a new offspring by crossover or mutation, or crossover, mutation, and inversion. Like this process continues. So until we get a convergent solution, right? So this is the generic working principle of an genetic algorithm. So this flow chart actually explains about the working of a simple GA, the simple genetic algorithm, how it works. Okay. So 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 in a simple genetic algorithm, what happens? So initially we start uh, with the initial set of population n. Okay, and then we are evaluating each individuals. We are evaluating each individuals. So this is also called as fitness. This is also called as evaluating the fitness of each individual. Okay, so we assign a fitness score for every individual, and then we check probably the one with the highest fitness we take, and we check whether the convergence is met or not. Convergence means with the fitness value of the of the individual who is having the highest fitness score. Are we happy with this fitness score or not? So every individual is a solution. So basically here we are checking that are we convinced with this solution or not. If you are convinced with this solution, then return the individual with the best fitness value. Okay. So this is what we are doing here. Suppose if you are not convinced with the solution, so this fitness score I'm not happy, then what we do, then here we are select NP individuals. Select NP individuals, that is NP is some number. Okay, out of these n individuals, totally the total population contains n individuals. From this n, we are selecting NP individuals, maybe the one with good fitness score. Okay, say for example, select NP individuals such that their fitness score is more than 0.8. Okay, so we are identifying the individuals with a high fitness score, and then after identifying those individuals, those NP individuals, then we have to create a mating pool, that is pair of parent for generating new offspring. Then for these NP individuals, you have to find a mating pair, that is another set of NP individuals you have to find. Okay, because we want to create offsprings, right? So we are selecting NP individuals. Then for these NP individuals, we are identifying the mating pair randomly. This mating pair is identified randomly, okay, from the mating pool, right? And then we perform reproduction. So reproduction involves these three operations: crossover, mutation, and inversion. So all these operations were performed, and new offsprings were reproduced. Okay. So obviously there are NP parents. So there will be NP offsprings. There are NP parents, so there will be NP offsprings. Now as a last step, what we are doing, replace all the individuals in the last generation with new offsprings created. Okay. Replace all the individuals in the last generation. That is, in the previously we had n individuals. From that you replace everything with this NP. Okay. Then again you from these new offsprings. So here what we are doing, replace all the individuals in the last generation with the new offsprings. In the previous round, whatever you have created, those all the things will be replaced with NP. Now once again we evaluate the fitness of all the individuals, and we take the one with the highest fitness score, and we check whether the convergence criteria is met or not. If the convergence criteria is met, then stop the process, right? Otherwise again continue this process. So this is how the simple GA works. So basically here the main difference is, here we are if convergence is not met, then we are identifying NP individuals with highest fitness score. Then we are identifying equal number of mating partners for them, and from this we are creating offspring. Okay, and this new offspring will replace the individuals which are created in the previous generation, and again identifying the one with the highest fitness score and check whether the convergence is met or not. Otherwise continue the process, like again select another NP individuals, so on and so forth. So this is how basically this simple GA works, right? So here initial population is represented as N, size of mating pool is represented as NP, because if there are NP individuals, then the number of parents will be NP, right? Total number of parents, right? So NP is something calculated like this: NP is equal to P modulo N. Okay. So this P is some value which will be given. So based on this NP is calculated. The convergence threshold is delta. That is, if the fitness score is more than this, then we are happy with the solution. So that is called as convergence criteria. Convergence threshold is represented as delta. Mutation is represented as mu. Inversion is represented with this symbol, and crossover is represented with rho. So these are the parameters that are used in simple genetic algorithm. So these are the features of simple genetic algorithm. It may have overlapping generation. Only fractions of individuals are replaced. That is, so at last, what we are replacing, whenever you create a new set of offsprings, the new set of offsprings will only replace the previous generation. It won't replace all the generation. Okay, assume that currently the population contains four generations. Say generation 1 or generation 2. The initial population contains all these things. Generation 3 and generation 4. These are the four generations currently available in the initial population. Okay, now say you are identifying NP individuals with the highest fitness score, and you are creating a new set of offsprings. Okay, this new set of offsprings will replace which generation here in this case? This new set of offsprings will replace which generation? If you recall from this flow chart, the new offsprings will replace, it won't replace the entire population, it will replace all individuals in the last generation with the new offsprings created. Okay, so what I am asking is, assume that the initial population contains this many generations, generation 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, and say that from these you are identifying the individual with the highest fitness score, but the solution is not converged, that is you are not happy with the solution. Then you have to identify NP individuals, and then you have to identify NP mating pairs, and then you are creating new offspring. So this new offspring, now it should replace which generation? Yes, answer. This new offspring, it should replace the entire population, or it should replace uh, which one, or should it replace something or not? Am I audible or not? Then answer. This new offspring should replace which thing? Yes. See, what is this flowchart says? It's a very straightforward question, right? It will replace the individual in the last generation. So what it will replace here? Are you getting the question? So so the new offspring will replace which generation? Yeah, it's a very straightforward question. Like, why this much time? I'm not understanding. See, there are four generations in the overall population. So what it says, the algorithm says that whenever you create a new set of offsprings, so obviously there will be NP new set of offsprings. This new offspring should replace all the members of the last generation. What is last generation? Generation 4. This will be replaced. This will be replaced by this offspring. Okay? Because this is the last generation, right? Are you getting? So now this generation 4 will be replaced by this. Let us call this as offspring 1. Now assume that again we are out of all these things, again we are identifying the best individual, but still the solution is not converged. Again we identify another set of NP individuals with a good fitness score, and identify their mating pair and create new offspring. Let us assume this is offspring 2. Now this offspring 2 will replace which one? No, Akila. Now here out of all these things, which is new generation? Offspring 1. Offspring 1 it will replace. Are you getting? So like that it continues. Like that it continues until it converges, right? So this is how this what you call the simple GA algorithm works. Right? So these are some of the features of simple GA. So what it says, it has overlapping generations. Yes, it may have overlapping generation because we are replacing the lost generation. Okay, so we are not replacing the first generation. Okay, so there are overlapping generations possible. Only fractions of individuals are replaced. We are not replacing the entire population. Only one generation we are replacing. It is computationally expensive because we are not what you call uh, we have to perform so many operations because you have to identify NP individuals, and for all the NP individuals you have to perform crossover mutation, uh, what you call crossover mutation, reversing, I mean inversion. All these things should be performed for all the NP individuals. So it is computationally expensive, and but the algorithm will perform well when the initial population size is large. Okay, even though it is computationally expensive, the algorithm will perform well if the initial population is large, because if the initial population is large, then there is highly likely that you can identify individuals with good fitness score. Okay, here each individual is a solution, each individual is a solution. So if you identify, the more you identify individuals with a good fitness score, it is more likely that you are approaching close to the solution. Okay, so in general it gives better results. Selection is biased towards more highly fit individuals. Hence, the average fitness is expected to increase in the successive iteration. Yeah, that is true. Because in each iteration, what we are doing, we are identifying NP individuals with good fitness score. We are not randomly picking the NP. We are picking NP with good fitness score. Their mate only we are picking randomly. Okay. So it is highly likely that after a period of time, the overall fitness score of the population will increase. Okay, right? The best individual may appear in any iteration. Okay, so we best individual means best solution, right? Because here every individual corresponds to a solution. So this is about simple GA. The next algorithm is steady state GA. So there is a little difference between simple GA and steady state GA. So let us see the algorithm. So as usual, initially we have initial population of size 1, size n, and then we evaluate the each individuals and we identify their fitness score. Now select two individuals without repetition. Okay, without repetition, select two individuals. That means you can either you can pick up randomly. Again, it varies, right? Either you can pick up randomly, or you identify the individuals, two individuals with highest fitness score, but select two individuals only, right? Whereas in simple GA, if you remember, we are selecting NP individuals with good fitness score. But here we are selecting only two individuals. Okay, and for these two individuals, we are performing crossover, mutation, and inversion. Once all these things are done, you check whether the convergence criteria is before that what we are checking, not convergence, reject the offspring if duplicated. So we are selecting two individuals and then we are performing reproduction, that is crossover, mutation and inversion. Then we are checking whether the new offspring created, so this is a new offspring created, whether the new offspring created, is it a duplicate one or not, that is a copy of this offspring is already available or not. If it is already available, then reject it. Then reject it and again go back and here go and select another two individuals and then perform crossover, mutation and inversion. So this process repeats until you identify a unique offspring. So here we ensure that a unique offspring is created. Once the unique offspring is created, evaluate the offspring. That is, identify its fitness score. Okay. Identify its fitness score. If the offspring is better than worst individual, see already in the population, already we have set of populations. n individuals are there. So for all the n individuals we have given ranking, that is we have given the fitness score. So there is a fitness score, let me call it as FS. There is a fitness score for every individual. Now you have identified an offspring, you have created a new offspring, and for that new offspring you have also calculated the fitness score. Okay, now you just see whether you whether the new offspring's fitness score is better than the worst individual. Worst individual means the one with the least fitness score. Okay, if the offspring is better than the worst individual, so say assume that there is an individual X. Okay, see the fitness score of X, let us assume it is zero point 0.2, but the fitness score of this new offspring that we created, yeah, new offspring. Okay, so this is, let me call it as new, or NO, new offspring that we created. Let us assume its fitness score is 0.6. Now the worst individual's fitness score is 0.2 and the new offspring's fitness score is 0.6. So this new offspring will replace this worst individual. Worst individual is what? X. So X will be replaced with NO and its fitness score will be updated with 0.6. Okay. So this is what we do. And then we check whether the convergence is met or not. That is, I check whether we are happy with the solution or not by identifying the best individual from this. If you are not happy with the solution, again go back, again go here, identify next two individuals, perform reproduction, that is crossover, mutation and inversion, and if it is a duplicate offspring then reject it. If it is not a duplicate offspring, then evaluate the its what you call fitness score, and if its fitness score is better than the fitness score of the worst individual, then replace this new offspring with the worst individual, then check whether convergence is met or not. If convergence is met, then return that as a solution and then stop. Otherwise, repeat this process. Okay. So this is how this steady state genetic algorithm works. Okay. So could someone tell what's the difference between SGA and SSGA? SGA is simple genetic algorithm. SSGA is steady state genetic algorithm. What's the difference between these two? What's the difference between SSGA and SGA? In the flowchart, where is the main difference? Yes? Yeah. Hmm. 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 Yeah, Kilo, fine, good. So that is the main difference. In SGA, we identify NP pairs and then we create new offspring, and then we check whether we are satisfied with the solution or not. If not satisfied, we continue with the process. In SSGA, we identify only two individuals and then we perform crossover, mutation, inversion, and then we check whether it's a duplicate or not. If it's not a duplicate, we evaluate the offspring, and then if the fitness score of the offspring is better than the worst individual, then the worst individual will be replaced with the newly created offspring, and then we check whether the convergence is met or not. If convergence is not met, then again we have to repeat the entire process, right? So this is the main difference between SSGA and SGA, right? Okay, so these are the features of steady state GA, salient features in steady state GA. This is SSGA, not SGA. Okay, steady state genetic algorithm. So generation gap is small. Only two offsprings are produced in one generation. Okay, so so actually only one offspring is produced, right? Only one offspring is produced in each generation. It is applicable when the population size is small, or when the chromosomes are of or when the chromosomes are of longer length. Evaluation operation is less computationally expensive. Okay, so it is not as computationally expensive as SGA. Uh, there are some limitations. There is a chance that this algorithm may get stuck in local optima. So in the last class we have discussed what is meant by local optima. So, so local optima can be either local maxima or local minima. So in this graph, if you see, this is global minima, which is the global optimum solution, whereas this is a local minima. So in SSG also there are chances that the algorithm may get stuck in local minima if crossover, mutation and inversion is not strong enough to diversify the population. Okay, premature convergence may result. Premature convergence means local optima. Local optima is nothing but a premature convergence. It means that the user assumes that this is a better solution, but actually there is another solution which is better than this, which the user is unaware of. Okay, it is susceptible to stagnation. Inferiors are neglected or removed and keeps moving from trials for very long period of time without any gain. So the algorithm actually it is susceptible to stagnation in the sense the algorithm progresses very slowly, because in each iteration we select only two individuals and then we perform offspring and then we check whether we are what do you call whether the convergence is met or not. So to identify the solution it may take a long period of time. So it may get into stagnation also, right? So this is the introduction to genetic algorithm, right? So with this we'll move to the next topic. Here we'll be discussing genetic algorithm operations. So in this lecture we'll be discussing the operations in genetic algorithm. So in the last lecture we have discussed the basic working of genetic algorithm. So from the working of genetic algorithm, actually you can understand what are the operations. So if you want to represent a simple genetic algorithm, I can say like this: start, then identify the individual population. I am calling it as IP, individual population. Then from this you pick up the one with the best fitness score, and then check whether the convergence is met or not. So I am calling it as CONV, convergence is met or not. So if convergence is met, yes, then stop the process. Then stop the process. If convergence is not met, then you have to identify some mating pair. So this mating pair can be either only 2 or it can be NP or whatever it may be. That varies with algorithm. Okay. Then we perform reproduction. This reproduction involves crossover, mutation and inversion. So say I am calling it a C crossover, M mutation, I inversion. And then we create new offspring. So after creating new offspring, this new offspring may replace either part of the population in the original population or some criteria it will replace. And again we check whether the after creating this new offspring, again we check whether the convergence is met or not. If convergence is met, we will stop. Otherwise, once again continue this process until it converges. So this is the overall working procedure of a genetic algorithm. So here there are many steps are involved. So these steps, for example, in each block we perform some operation. So for everything we can give a name. Okay, so initially we are saying initial population is there, but how this initial population is created? So actually in genetic algorithm, this initial population is created by an operation called encoding. So encoding is a technique which is used to create the initial population. Okay. So encoding is a technique which is used to create the initial population. And then what we have to do? We evaluate the fitness of individual. We evaluate the fitness. Fitness, I will call it as FS. We find the fitness of every individual. So that is performed by an operation called fitness evaluation. Okay. The individual fitness is evaluated by an operation called fitness evaluation. And then after identifying the fitness of each individual, then we take the individual with the highest fitness, and then we check are we happy with this solution or not. So how do we check? There will be some test. So based on some criteria we check. So that checking is called as convergence test. So that checking is called as convergence test. So if it is converged, then we stop the algorithm. If it is not converged, then you have to identify the mating pool. So then we identify the set of pairs, and then we have to perform reproduction. Again, reproduction involves these three operations: crossover, mutation, and inversion. So basically these 7 are the operations that are possible in a genetic algorithm. Okay. So this is what we are going to discuss in next few lectures. So in this lecture we will be discussing only the first operation, which is encoding. Okay. So what for encoding is used? Yeah, Kilo, good. So encoding, why we are using, in the sense it is used to create the initial population. So this initial population is created through encoding. So how this encoding works? So this will be the objective of this today's session. Okay, fine. So this is what we are going to discuss in this class. So basically there are 4 types of encoding schemes available. These are, the first one is called as binary encoding. The second method is called as real value encoding. The third method is called as order encoding, and the fourth is tree encoding. So these are the 4 encoding schemes which we are going to discuss: binary encoding, real value encoding, order encoding, and tree encoding. Binary encoding is otherwise called as binary coded GA or simply binary GA. These are just other names. Binary encoding is otherwise called as binary coded GA. That is, if the initial population is created by using binary encoding, then that genetic algorithm can also be called as binary coded GA or simply binary GA. If the initial population is created using real value encoding, then that genetic algorithm can also be called as real coded GA or simply real GA. Okay. If the initial population is generated using ordered encoding, then that genetic algorithm can be called as ordered GA or permutated GA. Okay. So tree encoding, it does not have any other names, just only one name. Fine. So the genetic algorithm metaphor, it includes 2 elements. One is individual and the other one is population. So individual means what? So individual means one possible solution. One possible solution is called as individual. Right? So in genetics terminology, individual means one human. But in genetic algorithm terminology, individual means one possible solution. Okay. So if individual is one possible solution, then what will be population? Could someone guess? Yeah, good. So otherwise you can call it as what? Set of all possible solutions. Repeating. So population is nothing but set of all possible solutions. So out of this set of all possible solutions, if you pick up any one solution, then that is called as individual. Okay. So individual is a single solution, while a population is a set of individuals. That is nothing but the set of possible solutions at an instance of searching process. And then here we will be using 2 terms. One is called as phenotype, the other one is genotype. Right? So an individual is defined by a chromosome. A chromosome stores genetic information, which is called as phenotype for an individual. Right? So we know that the chromosome contains genetic information, but so this is generic. Chromosome contains genetic information, so that is a generic statement. So that is called as phenotype. And if you exactly know the chromosome contains what genetic information, okay, we know that the chromosome contains genetic information. So knowing that chromosome which is a very generic statement. Chromosome contains genetic information, so that is called as genotype. And if you exactly know the chromosome contains which genetic information, then that is called as phenotype. Okay, so this is something like, say for example, a genotype is represented something like this: factor 1, factor 2, up to factor n. Okay, so it means this factor 1, factor 2 may be some variables in our case. That is, a chromosome is represented by these different genes. This you can call it as gene 1, this you can call it as gene 2, this you can call it as gene 3. But exactly what is this gene we don't know. Okay, so in that case we call it as genotype. But if you know what type of gene it is, if you know exactly what type of gene it is, every individual gene, then that is called as phenotype, right? So in our case, what we can say in case of genetic algorithm, these factors you can connect with some variables. Okay, these factors we can connect with some variables. Say this factor 1 is x1, factor 2 is x3, so on and so forth. Factor n is xn. So now we know that a solution to this problem, it is a function of all these variables x1, x2 up to xn. So knowing that much is called as genotype. But exactly if you know what is the value of x1, say x1 should be 2, x2 should be 5, so on and so forth, xn should be 4. If you know exactly what is the values of these parameters or these variables, then that we call it as phenotype. Okay, so this is a genotype. Here for every factor the value is given. Maybe factor 1 is a, factor 2 is b, factor 3 is c, something like that. Then we know the values, so we know the actual gene information, so that is called as phenotype. Okay, so what's the difference between genotype and phenotype? What is genotype? What is genotype? What is genotype? Okay. Yeah, exactly. So genotype is very generic. At the top level, we know, okay, this is the structure, overall structure we know. But in phenotype, we know the individual details also. So if you know exactly what is the value of that, then that is called as phenotype. Okay. Okay. So this is so this is with respect to genetic algorithm, genotype and phenotype. But I mean with respect to, in the previous slide what we discussed with respect to genes, genetics. So in case of genetic algorithm, so here a gene a gene is the GS representation of single factor. Okay, that is the design factor which has domain values. So these domain values can be either continuous, discontinuous or discrete. Okay, there is a mapping from genotype to phenotype. This eventually decides the performance of problem solving. So in genetic algorithm also, this in case of genotype, we represent what are the factors necessary to solve a problem, or what are the variables involved in solving the problem. So that we call it as genotype, and the mapping between and assigning the values to the parameters, it's called as phenotype. Okay. So these are the four encoding schemes which we are going to discuss: binary encoding, real value encoding, order encoding, and tree encoding. So in case of binary encoding, we represent the gene in terms of bits, zeros and ones. Okay, we represent the gene in terms of bits. It's a combination of zeros and ones. In case of real value encoding, we represent the gene in terms of some values or symbols or string. So in binary encoding, it's only a combination of the genes are represented only through a combination of zeros and ones, whereas in real value encoding, the genes are represented either through values or symbols or through strings. In permutation or ordered encoding, the genes are represented in a particular sequence. So here ordering is the question. We know that these are the parameters involved, but the solution lies in ordering it properly. Okay, so how we are going to order that? In case of tree encoding, we represent the genetic information or genes in the form of a tree. So basically we represent in the form of a binary tree. So these are the four types of encoding schemes: binary, real value, order encoding and tree encoding. In binary encoding, the gene is represented as zeros and ones. In real value encoding, the gene is represented in terms of values or symbols or strings. In order encoding, it is represented as a sequence of elements. That is, in what order we are going to arrange it. That decides the solution. In tree encoding, the gene is represented in the form of a tree. So let us start with binary encoding. So as we have already discussed, in binary encoding, the gene or chromosome is represented by a combination of zeros and ones. So for example, this is an example, individual 1. So this is nothing but one possible solution can be represented something like this. Individual 2. So basically we are representing here the possible solution or gene as a combination of zeros and ones. So let us discuss this with an example. So we'll take this problem. This problem is called a 0-1 knapsack problem. Okay. So the question is this: there are n items. Okay, there are n items. Each item has its own cost and weight. So say a shop or a place has n items, and each item has its cost and its weight. Okay, and there is a knapsack. Knapsack means you have a bag. Okay, knapsack is nothing but a bag, and the total capacity of bag is W. That is, the bag can hold only this much weight. It cannot hold anything beyond this weight. Okay, the problem is to take as much items as possible, but not exceeding the capacity of the knapsack. It is not exceeding the capacity of the bag. So you have these many items. Each items, for each items you know the weight and the cost. So the objective is you have to take as many items as possible to increase the cost. Okay, because we want to pack more things which are more costly. Okay, so we want to take as much of as items such a way that to increase the cost, but the total items taken cannot exceed W. Okay, so this can be better expressed through a problem. See, assume that a thief is entered into a shop. Okay, a thief has entered into a shop, right? So the thief is having a knapsack, that is a bag. Okay, and the bag has a capacity, that is it can hold only the weight of W. It cannot hold anything beyond that. And the shop contains several items. Okay, the cost of each item is Ci, and the weight of each item is Wi. Okay. Now what is the objective of the thief? The objective of the thief is to take maximum items from the shop. Okay, but anyway, whatever he took, it cannot exceed this weight W, right? Okay, so this is a knapsack problem. So this is how the knapsack problem is defined. Probably you might have learned in some other courses also. This is a classical problem in computer science. So there are several techniques to solve this. This can also be so this is basically an optimization problem. This is an optimization problem and can be mathematically, it can be described like this. Okay, it can be mathematically described like this: maximize sigma I equal to 1 to n Ci Wi into Xi. So Ci represents the cost of an item, Wi represents the weight of an item. Okay, Xi represents whether the thief has taken this item or not. Okay, say the number of items are represented as Xi. So X1, X2 up to Xn, these are the items. Okay, So whether the thief has taken this item or not, or how many pieces of this item the thief has taken, so that is represented as xi, and this xi will take the value as 0 to 1. Okay, but in our case, let us assume that the thief will either take or he won't take. Okay, it is not that he takes. Let us assume that each items are only one piece is available. So he will either take or he will not take. In this case, this xi can be either 0 or 1. So if x1 is 0, it means that the thief has not taken this item x1. If x2 is 1, then it means that he has taken this item. Then the cost and weight is considered. Okay. So if it is 1, its cost and weight will be considered. If it is 0, this entire set will become 0, right? So this is the problem, and here the objective is what? To maximize the cost, right? And there is a constraint. What is the constraint? The constraint is that the overall weight should not exceed W. So xi represents, so xi will be 1 only for those items which the thief is taking. So remaining it will be 0. So 1 into Wi and summation of all the things, it should not become greater than W. So this is how this problem can be represented mathematically. And so this is here just we defined the problem mathematically. Now here is one example for this problem. Okay, assume that the shop contains only 3 items. These are the 3 items. Say instead of x1, x2, x3, it is given as i1, i2, i3, i1, i2, i3, and this is the weight of each item. The weight of i1 is 10 kgs, the weight of i2 is 20 kgs, the weight of i3 is 30 kgs, and the weight of knapsack, the knapsack can hold totally 50 kgs. It cannot hold anything more than that. Okay, so now could you say, so what are the possible combinations available here? I'm not asking anything technically. I mean, in brute force technique you can answer. Is the problem is clear? So these are the 3 items available in the shop: i1, i2, i3. The capacity of, the weight of i1 is 10 kg, i2 20 kg, i3 30 kg, and these are the cost. Okay, so and the knapsack size is 50 kg. It can hold totally 50 kg weight, not more than that. Okay, so the thief will pick which items, or the thief is allowed to pick which item, because the knapsack should not exceed 50 kg. And also at the same time the thief should maximize his profit or cost. So which items he will pick up? No, 10, 20, 30 means its weight will become what? No, only one time. He can visit only one time. He 10, 20 means its weight is 30. Okay, 10, 30 means its weight is 40, but he can hold 50 kgs, right? So what is the wise solution? Yeah, 30, 20 he will take, right? 30, 20 means his knapsack will be full, and also the cost of this item is actually more, right? 120. The cost of this item is more. So he will be looking for the item whose cost is more. He will not mind about weight until it reaches 50 kg. You're getting? So probably he will pick up 30 and 20. Okay, so that 50 kgs is reached, and he got $220 worth of product, right? Okay, so now this solution, how we can solve, how this problem can be represented in what do you call binary encoding technique. That's what we are going to discuss. Okay, so first of all, these are the possible combinations. So these are the possible combination. Anyway, these are the different combinations available. Okay, so one is the thief can take only 10 and he can leave. This is one combination. Or he can, this first item, I1 alone. or the thief can take only I2 and he can leave, or the thief can take only I3 and he can leave, or the thief can take I1 and I2, or the thief can take uh, I1 and I3, or the thief can take I2 and I3, or the thief can take all the three. But this is not a feasible solution. All these are feasible these are the possible solution, but here some of the solutions are feasible, some of the solutions are not feasible. Feasible in the sense, it this solution, it does not satisfy the constraint, because the constraint says what, the knapsack should not exceed 50 kg, but if this solution, if you apply, it will exceed 50 kg. So theoretically, so practically this cannot be considered, but mathematically speaking, this is one of the option. Okay, this is one of the options. So for n items, so when there are n items, how many combinations available? These are this many combinations available. 2 to the power n minus 1 trials available. Are you getting? So here how many items are there? In this case, how many items are there? So how many combinations of how many solution combinations are possible? Yeah, 7 combinations are available. Okay, so these are the 7 combinations: 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, right? So this is nothing but, you know, this 0 triple 0, I mean, this is the thing, 0 0 0 0 0 1. Okay, I mean, this first one you can ignore, because 0 0 is not a, the thief will not leave without anything. Okay, 0 0 1 means he is taking, so this is item 1, this is item 2, this is item 3, so it means he is taking only item 1. This means he is taking item 2 alone. This means he is taking item 1 and 2, so on and so forth, right? Okay. Okay. So 0 means item 1 is not included, 1 means 0 means the particular item is not included, 1 means the particular item is included. So these are the different combinations we have. Okay, 7 combinations we have: 1 2 3 4 5 6 and 7. Now from this, some of the combination may not satisfy the constraint. In this case, this combination will not satisfy the constraint, so we have to ignore this, right? So these are the, so in this case, this is the initial population. So if you want to represent this problem, if you want to solve this problem using genetic algorithm, so basically we are discussing what, how to represent the initial population. If you want to solve this problem using genetic algorithm, then first you have to represent the initial population. What is initial population? Initial population is nothing but set of all individuals. Set of all individuals is nothing but what? Set of all solutions. Set of all solutions. From this only we are going to pick up one solution. So either you can call it a set of all individuals or set of all solutions. So in this case, these are the set of all solutions. And using binary encoding, this is how we represent. Is this clear? If there are 4 items, then how many solutions are possible? Yeah, that is, what's the value? 15 possible solutions. Okay, so like that. So basically this, for this kind of problems, so it is not that, so depending on the problem, I think you have to choose the encoding scheme. Okay, right, encoding scheme. For this kind of problem, binary encoding scheme may be appropriate, right? So if there is another item is also available, say I4 of size of 840 kg, and its cost is say $80. So in that case you have 4 items. So to represent these 4 items, totally this many things are available: 2 to the power n minus 1, which is, now n is 4. Okay, 2 to the power 4 minus 1, which is 15. Okay, so now what will be the initial population? What will be the value of initial population? If it is 3 items, this is how the initial population is represented using binary scheme. I am calling it as BS. So this is the initial population. Okay. If it is 4 items, then what will be the initial population? Yes. leave that. If you yeah, all 1 0 0 0, all these combinations, right? 1 0 0 0 1, everything. Okay, so up to 1 1 1 1, right? So totally you will get 15, right? So this is nothing but the initial population. Now here initial population is represented using binary encoded scheme, right? Fine. So the encoding of 0 1 knapsack problem in general, for n items. Okay, so if there are n items, then we have how many combinations? 2 to the power n minus 1. Okay, then its genotype can be generically represented like this. Then its phenotype will be something like this, right? That is, we include all the bits here. So here is another example. Say there is an equation given like this: f of x equal to x squared by 2 plus 125 by x. Minimize. So the purpose is to minimize this function. That is, find the minimize means what? Find the value of x for which this function will give the lowest value, right? So that is what is called as minimize. Okay, and also there is a constraint is given here. X should be between 0 and 15. Okay, x should be between 0 and 15. That is, it should not be less than 0, and also it should not be greater than 15. So now you can plot a graph. If you plot a graph for this, then you can identify what is the minimum value for x. This function will result in the smallest value. For what value of x this function will return the minimum value, that you can find out. Okay, so this genotype is just, see, in this genotype we are just representing x, but in the phenotype we are representing the value which gives the minimum result, right? So here it is 1101. So what is this binary equivalent? This is 8421. So it is 8 plus 4 12, 12 plus 1 13. So when you apply x is equal to 13, probably it will give the smallest value, right? Okay, I'm not sure, you apply and check, but this is just an example. This is an example for genotype and phenotype. So so here genotype, in this case there is only one variable, but it is not always that the equation should have only one variable. It may have more than one variable also. For example, if you see this equation here, it says that maximize this equation. So that is, we have to identify, now you have to identify two values. We have to identify x and y. You have to identify such x and y such that this function will return a maximum value, right? And also there is a condition. The condition is that x plus y should be less than or equal to 10. Totally, when you add x plus y, it should be less than or equal to 10. It cannot exceed 10. And there is another condition that x should be in between 1 and 10. That is, x cannot be less than 1, and also it should not be greater than 10. And y should be in between minus 10 and plus 10. Okay, so these three constraints are here for this problem. Here we want to maximize this function. That is, we want to identify for which value of x and y this function will produce the maximum output. That's what we want to find. Given these constraints, what are the constraints? X plus y should be less than or equal to 10, and x should be between 1 and 10, and y should be between what you call minus 10 and plus 10. Okay, so here the genotype, it includes two variables. It is not one variable, x and y. There are two variables, right? And these are maybe one possible phenotype. We are taking x as one value, y as another value. Okay, so here x is what? Again, x is 13. X is equal to 13. This is the decimal equivalent of this binary value 13. Y you can see this is a negative number. It may take negative values also. So I think this is represented in 2's complement. So you just take, again you take the 2's complement of this. Okay, so if you take 2's complement is nothing but adding 1 with 1's complement. So if you convert take 1's complement, that is convert all 1's to zeros and all zeros to 1. Again add 1 to that, that is nothing but the 2's complement. 0 plus 1 1 1 1 0 0. Okay, so what is this value? 4 2 1. 4 plus 2 6 plus 1 7 7. But this is, you can see here, this is a sign bit, it is 1, so probably it is minus 7. Okay, so here y is considered as minus 7. So this is a genotype, and this is the phenotype, right? So I will give you one example, you tell me what is the genotype for that. Phenotype is nothing but one possible value that that particular genotype variable can take. Okay, say there is a function like this. Say I am giving a function f of x comma y comma z. Say three variables are here. Say x to the power 4 plus 2 x square y square plus 3 x y z plus 4 z square y. Okay, now this genotype, how will you represent the genotype? X, y and z. Okay, it's now three variables because here. So this is genotype, this is very generic. Okay, phenotype, we know, we should say I am giving a constraint like this. X should be between 1 and 5. Y should be between 6 and 10. And Z should be between 20 and 25. Okay. So could you tell one possible value for X? Give one example for phenotype, for this genotype. Give any one possible phenotype for this genotype. Yes, these are the constraints. X should be between 1 and 5, Y should be between 6 and 10, and Z should be between 20 and 25. So X can take any what value? One also it can take, including, right? 1 equal to X. Okay, so give one example for X. Tell some value for X, Y and Z which will satisfy this genotype, these constraints. Yes. Can I put 6 here? For X, can I keep 6? No. Can I keep 3? For Y, can I keep 7? Yeah. For Z, anything between 20 and 25, maybe 21, right? So this is an example for genotype, and this is one example for phenotype, right? Okay. So these are the limitations of binary encoding scheme. So it needs an effort to convert it to binary form. So you have to represent the values in binary form. That is when you want to write the algorithm also, or when you want to program also, everything should be converted to binary notation, right? So accuracy depends on the binary representation. These are the limitations and advantage. Since operations with binary representation is faster, it provides a faster implementation of GA, and hence identifying the solution also will become faster. Okay, so the computers generally perform better with binary representation, right? So already here we are converting it to binary representation, so it performs faster. Okay, and any optimization problem has its binary coded GA. So it says that any problem can be represented through binary coded GA. Okay, so it's not that only a particular problem can be represented using binary coded GA. Any problem can be represented. The initial population of any problem can be represented using binary coded GA. These are the advantage of this technique. Then the next is real value encoding. So it is very similar to binary coded scheme. The only thing is in binary coded scheme we represent the binary values, zeros and ones, whereas in real value encoding we represent the what you call the attributes with a real value, right? Say for example, a genotype is given like this. The genotype depends on two variables x and y. Then its phenotype will be something like this, 5.28, and y is minus 475.36. So in case of binary representation, binary encoding scheme, here we give a binary value, but here in case of real value encoding scheme, here we give directly we are giving a real value. That's it. So real value encoding with binary codes. Okay. Real value encoding with binary codes. For any continuous design variable x such that x falls between xl and xu. So design variable in the sense these are the variables these are the variables which are involved in the problem and for which we have to find the values, right? So there is a design variable x such that the value the x can lie between this and this, xl and xu. This is the lower limit and this is the upper limit. Okay? And if epsilon is the precision required, the amount of precision required is given through epsilon. Okay, then the string length n. Okay, then the string length n should be equal to this. So here what we are discussing in the sense how to represent a real value in binary code. Say for example, you are given a real value, but we want to represent the real value in binary code. Say this real value, for example, 5.28 is there. If you want to represent it in a binary code format, then how to do that? That's what we are discussing here. Okay. So this can be done by using this formula. A formula is given to convert the real value into binary codes. Because if it is represented in binary code, then the genetic algorithm can perform faster. Right? So if x is the real value, and this is the one we want to represent in binary value, then you should also know xl and xu. xl is the lower limit of x and xu is the upper limit of x. And epsilon is the precision required. How much accuracy required, that is represented through epsilon. Okay? That is, when you convert a real value to binary representation, there may be some information you may be missing. That is, you cannot say that it is accurately precise. So the degree of precision required is represented through epsilon. So epsilon takes value between 0 and 1. It also represents the obtainable accuracy. How much accuracy is possible? That is also represented through epsilon. Okay. Now, so if you know all these things, then you can identify like how many bits are required. You can identify like how many bits are required to represent this x in binary. So how many n represent the number of bits required to represent this real value in binary. That can be calculated using this equation, log 2 xu minus xl by epsilon. Okay, right? So this is two-way. So that is, if you know epsilon, or if you could decide the obtainable accuracy, then from that you can identify n. N is the number of bits required to represent this x in binary form. Or if you have a binary value, okay, or if you have a binary value and if you want to identify its accuracy, I mean how much it is accurate with respect to the real value, that can also be identified something like this. Epsilon is equal to xu minus xl by 2 to the power n. Okay, so this is just the reverse of this formula, right? So basically this is the equation which is used to convert the real value to a binary code. Okay, so if you want to convert the real value to a binary code, then how many bits are required? Actually here we are not performing the conversion. To convert a real value into binary, if you want to represent this real number into binary, then how many bits are required? That n gives the number of bits. If n is 4, then it means that this x can be represented using 4 bits. 1, 2, 3, 4. If it is 5, then it means you need 5 bits to represent this. Okay. And these are the parameters required to find this xl, xu and epsilon. Right. So could someone summarize this slide, what we have discussed here? Yes. What we have discussed here. What is this slide is talking about? Okay. Yeah, this n represents what? Yeah, when you convert it to a binary value, how many bits, using how many bits it can be represented. Okay. What is xl and xu? That is, x can take value only between these ranges. What is epsilon? Epsilon, what values it can take? Any value, anything between 0 to 1. Okay. What is this formula? Yeah, if n is known, if some binary number is known, if some binary number is given 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, okay. But say that this binary number is created from a real value. But now you know that this number contains this many bits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bits. Now, if you want to know its accuracy, that is epsilon, that can be calculated using this. Right? Okay. We will be discussing some formulas, some problems on this. So this is here is a problem. See one. So x takes values between 1 and 16. X takes values between 1 and 16. Okay. N is given as 6. N is given as 6. Okay. So n is 6. Now the question is, what is epsilon? What is the formula for epsilon? Epsilon 2 to the power n. Okay, so in this case, what is xu? 16. What is xl? 1 divided by 2 to the power n. Right? What is n? 6. Okay, so 16 minus 1, 15. 15 by 64 is 0.249. Right? So this, so if you use n, if you use 6 bits, if you use 6 bits to represent this real value, then its obtainable accuracy is 0.25. Okay, that is, if you use only 6 bits to represent this real value x in binary form, then its accuracy will be 0.25. Here is another question. What is the obtainable accuracy for the binary representation for x in the range of 20.1 to 45.6 with 8 bits? What will be the, what is xl here? What is xu here? 45.6. What is xl? Divided by what? 2 to the power 8. What is the value? What's the, could someone solve this? What's the value? What's the output of this? 45.6 minus 20.1, which is 25.5 divided by 2 to the power 8. What is 2 to the power 8? 256. The answer is 0.099. Okay, 0.099, right? So this is the accuracy possible, right? Okay. So what about others? Others, see, everybody should respond, and if you are not following, you can also tell me so that I can decide like how should I proceed, right? But if you are keeping quiet, I cannot guess anything. So this is how we calculate the accuracy. Okay. Say for example, but in some cases, say in the above case, what is the binary representation of x if x is equal to 34.35? That is, assume that x takes value between 20.1 to 45.6. Now the question is different. The question says that if x is equal to 34.35, If x is equal to 34.35, then what will be its binary equivalent? How will you find that? Okay, there is a different formula for that, and that is given like this. So if you are asked to find x, that is the x is the binary equivalent, okay, of some value, right? So you have to find the binary. Uh, so you have to find the binary value of. You have to find the binary value of binary value for x. Okay. So this can be specified through this equation. X is equal to xl plus xu minus xl divided by 2 to the power minus 2 to the power n minus 1 into xb. That is x is the given. This is given. 35.35 is x. Okay. xl you know, xu you know, xb is the one we have to find. Okay. So we have to just plug into this equation. So in this case, x is 34.35. What is xl? xl 20.1 plus what is xu? Yeah, 45.6 minus 20.1 divided by 2 to the power n minus 1. Okay, so that is, yeah, okay, so that is 255 into xb. This is the one we have to find, right? So by solving this equation, it can be found. Once we know the length of the binary string for an obtainable accuracy, then we can have the following mapping relation from a real value x to its binary equivalent decoded value xb, which is given by this equation, where xb is the decoded value of a binary string. Okay, that xb is the decoded value of a binary string. That is, it means that here we are not going to get xb in binary form. We will get xb in decimal form only, but after that you have to convert it to binary. Okay, so if you solve this equation, obviously you will get xb in decimal form, then you have to convert it to binary, right? N is the number of bits in the representation. Here n represent the, like, how using how many bits this xp can be specified. So here is an example. Say suppose xl equal to 2, xu equal to 17, or the two extreme decoded values of a variable x, that is x lies between 2 and 17. Say n is equal to 4. Here xb is given. Say xb is equal to 10. xb here xb is given, right? In the previous problem, x is given and you are asked to find xp. So you have to solve this. So that means you have to take everything to this side. All these things you have to do, right? So you can solve this equation. It's not a difficult thing. But in this case, you are asked to find x, not xb, right? Okay, so this same formula, we have to find x. Here what is xl? What xl is 2, xu is 17, 17 minus 2, n is 4, so 2 to the power 4 minus 1 into xb is 10, right? So if you solve this equation, 17 minus 2 is what? 15. 2 to the power 4 minus 1 is what? What is 2 to the power? Yeah, so basically it is 15 by 15 into 10, so which is 1 into 10. Okay, so 12. Okay, so this is the xb. This is xb in decimal value, but again you have to convert it to binary. So this is the binary equivalent 1100, right? So xb, it is 10 and the corresponding x is 1100. So that's it about real value encoding, right? So far we have discussed two encoding schemes. One is binary encoding, other one is real value encoding. In binary encoding, the genotype and the respective phenotype will be represented in binary values, whereas in real value encoding the phenotype will be represented using real values, but sometimes we may want to convert the real value to binary form. So in that case we have to use these formulas, and how many and the accuracy of those binary values also depends on the number of bits that are used to represent those values. Okay, so there are some couple of formulas we have discussed to convert the real value to binary representation, right? So that's it about the second type of encoding. Now we'll move on to the third type of encoding, which is called as order encoding. Order encoding. So basically order encoding, it is something like in what order the thing should be done. Should I say, for example, there are certain set of tasks you want to do. Say these are the tasks, task 1 to task n. Okay, but assume that if I follow one particular order, I can complete the task in less amount of time. Or say that the different order you follow, the time to complete the task will be different. It is not that any order, if you follow any order, you will complete the job in the same time. No, that's not the case. So if you follow order 1, then you may complete the job in 1 hour. If you follow order 2, you may complete the job in 2 hours. If you follow order 3, you may complete the job in half an hour. Then in that case you will prefer order 3, right? So in such kind of problems, we go for this type of encoding, which is called as ordered encoding, because the ordering matters here, right? So basically if you order appropriately, the cost will be reduced. So one classical example for this kind of problem is traveling salesman problem. So in a traveling salesman problem, these are the set of cities. So all these dots represents the set of these cities that is to be visited by the traveling salesman. Okay, and the traveling salesman should visit all these cities, but he should visit each city exactly once. He should not visit any of the cities more than once. Okay, only one city he can visit more than once, that is the starting city, right? Because he has to again come back to the starting city. So the starting and the ending city should be same. So only that he can repeat visit twice, right? Now the salesman has to identify a order such a way that he can cover all the cities in less time or in least cost. Okay, so if this is the starting city, then it means that he is going like this, going like this, like this, like this, like this, and finally he is ending here, right? So there may be different paths available. There may be different paths available, but the traveling salesman is interested to find the shortest path. Right? So this is the problem. So this is basically comes under what? Ordered encoding. So in which order the traveling salesman should go, so that he can visit all the cities at a least cost. So understanding the traveling salesman problem, there is a cost of visiting a city from another city, and hence the total cost of visiting all the cities except the, and hence we need to find the total cost of visiting all the cities. Okay, the objective function is to find a tour, that is find a visit such a way that a simple cycle covering all the cities with a minimal cost. Why we call it a cycle? Because the traveling salesman starts with the same city and he ends in the same city. So basically it's a cycle, right? These are the constraints. All cities must be visited. So this is the objective function. It is represented just in English statement, to visit or to find a tour to visit all the cities with a minimum cost. The constraint is all cities must be visited. There will be only one occurrence of each city except the starting city. Right? And these are the design constraints. Euclidean distance may be taken as the measurement of cost. Otherwise, the distance will be specified explicitly. So Euclidean distance, it is a method of calculating distance between 2 points. So either you can consider Euclidean distance between 2 points as the distance between two cities. Otherwise in the in the problem itself, if the distance is specified, then take that as the distance. Okay. The above stated information are the design variables of the problem. So these are the design variables. The number of cities, the cost of reaching each cities, all these are the design variables. So how many possible solutions are available for a traveling salesman problem? If you ask the question, the answer is n factorial problems are n factorial possible paths are available. Okay, so this many possible paths are available, right? Okay. So if a traveling salesman wants to visit 4 cities, then how many possible solutions are available? 4 factorial, right? If he wants to visit 20 cities, then how many solutions are available? So these are the possible solutions. From this, you have to identify the best solution. Best solution is the one with the least cost. Okay. So here is an example. So generally, traveling salesman problems are represented through a graph. So here is a graph. So in this graph, these vertices represent cities. So A is a city, B is a city, C is a city, D is a city, E is a city. So here the problem includes how many cities? It contains how many cities? The traveling salesman is supposed to visit how many cities? That is n is equal to what? 5. So what are the possible solutions available? 5. Oh, 5 factorial. Okay. 5, yeah. So, right. So whatever the value of n factorial, that many solutions are available. Okay. Now this is a, see, now there may be a direct path from one city to another city. In some cases there may not be a direct path. For example, if you take from city A to B, there is a direct path. A to C, there is no direct path. So in that case, we will represent as infinity, because there is no direct path, or it's very high cost path. Okay, so that is represented through infinity. Similarly, A to A, already you are in A, so that is represented as 0. So this is how this matrix is filled. So basically this is a distance matrix. So here the column also represent all the cities A, B, C, D and E. I mean, these rows also represent the cities A, B, C, D, E, and all the column also represent the same cities A, B, C, D and E. And the intersection between any row and column is nothing but the distance D. So A to A, the distance is 0, A to B it's 2, A to C infinity, A to D, it's, what's the cost? A to D, it is 6. Okay, so it is just picked up from this map, and it is written here. A to E, it is 4, right? So like this what do you call this matrix is plotted. Okay, right? So this is how we can define the problem mathematically. So mathematically, what is our objective in traveling salesman problem? What is our objective? Could someone state it? To minimize the cost. And what is the constraint? Yeah. So all cities should be visited only once, but the starting and ending city should be same. That is, the starting city can be visited twice. One is at the first and one is at the last, right? So here you can see this is the cost function, and this cost function we want to minimize. How this cost function is given? Sigma I is equal to 0 to n minus 2. Okay, so there are n cities, means if there are n cities, then if I number from 0, it will go up to what? If there are n cities, if I number from 0, it will end at what? No, n, totally n cities. See, if it is 5 cities, if I number from 0, it will end with what? 4. So n cities, if I number with 0, it will end with n minus 1. Okay, so that is how this numbering is given. So you may wonder why it is n minus 2. So you may think it should end with n minus 1. No, it is n minus 2 is correct, because first let us take this part alone. Okay, this part, what it shows in the sense, d of ci comma ci plus 1. Okay, what is this D represents? Could you guess from the previous what do you call matrix? D represents what? D is distance. Okay, D is distance, so it is distance between ith city and I plus 1th city, right? So if I is 0, then it represents what? If I is 0, then what is Ci and Ci plus 1? C1, that is the distance from 0 to 1. Okay, city 0 to city 1. If I is 1, then what is this Ci and I plus 1? So on and so forth, right? If I is 2, it is 2 and 3. If I is 3, it is 3 and 3, like that. Okay, now comes the crucial question. If I is n minus 2, okay, if I is n minus 2, then what is Ci and Ci plus 1? Yeah, if I is n minus 2, if I is C n minus 2, comma n minus 1. Okay, so n minus 1 is what? What city? N minus 1 is the lost city. Are you getting? N minus 1 is the lost city, and n minus 2 is what? Lost but one city. Okay, so this is C n minus 2 to C n minus 1, so that it is ending with n minus 2, right? So this is one combination. Okay, this Ci, see here Ci means it is not that it is actually the first city. It may not be actually the first city. It is one combination, because we want to identify the right combination. Which combination of Ci to Cn minus 2 will give the least cost? So it is one combination of Ci. Okay, this is one combination, any one combination. There are, as we discussed, there are n factorial combination. So all the n factorial combinations will be considered here. But out of that, we will pick up the one which is going to give the minimum cost, right? But this part, it covers only from Ci2, that is C1 to Cn minus 1. But after visiting the lost city, where you should come back? After visiting the lost city, where should we come back? To the city 1 or 0? 0, 0. We are starting with what? 0, right? So that is what this part is included. Okay, this is not okay. This is so that we are including this part. This is what? D of distance of Cn minus 1 comma C0. Cn minus 1 is the lost city. Distance from lost city to 0th city. Okay. So basically this equation says that out of all the possible combinations, you find the one with the minimum cost. So that is the objective function for this problem, and subject to the criteria. What is the criteria? So these are the set of cities C0, C1, C2, Cn minus 1. So this is the combination. That is, we should visit all the cities exactly once, but only C0 can be visited 2 times. Okay, where P is an ordered collection of cities. This P is what? It is an ordered collection of cities such that Ci is not equal to Cj, right? So we have to identify the correct order. So that is how this ordering scheme represents. So there are n factorials permutations are available, ordering is available, but we have to identify the correct order. So that's it about tree, this ordered encoding, right? So could someone summarize what is meant by ordered encoding? What is ordered encoding? What we have to find in ordered encoding? Perfect path, that is in this example, in this case of traveling salesman problem. Generalize. Generally correct ordering, right? In your correct sequence. There may be plenty of sequence available, but you have to identify the right sequence, right? Okay. So that type of encoding is called as ordered encoding. So all these things are what? All these things are nothing but way of representing the initial population in a GA. Okay. So in this case, so in this problem, if you see, there are 5 factorial ways to represent the initial population. So 5 factorial means, as Akila said, there are 120 possible ways. So all these comes under initial population. So this is first ordering. This is one individual. Second ordering. This is another individual. Like that, all the 120 style of ordering will come in the initial population. But out of that, one will be the correct solution. So that we have to find later. Okay. We are not discussing other operations. We are discussing only on encoding, which is nothing but generating the initial population. Right. The next is tree encoding. Okay. In a tree encoding scheme, the initial population is nothing but a set of solution. So the solutions are encoded in the form of a binary tree. In case of tree encoding, the solutions are represented in the form of a binary tree. Okay. So this is a binary tree. A binary, I think you know everybody. A binary tree is a tree which can have maximum 2 children. So here you can see there is no node with more than 2 children. Either there are nodes with less than 2 children or max 2 children. The node A has 2 children. These are B and C. B has only one child, which is D. D don't have any child. C has 2 children, E and F. E has only one child, G. Okay. So this is how we represent binary tree pictorially. But how can we represent in a program? So there are several ways to represent a binary tree. So this binary tree can be represented using in-order traversal or pre-order traversal or post-order traversal. So if you have learned already data structures course, probably you may be familiar with this. So in-order traversal means, so everybody here attended data structures course. You can answer yes or no in the chat. Everybody of you has attended data structures. Are you aware of these concepts, in order, pre-order, post-order? Oh, yes, Akila, what about others? Yes? Are you all here or not? Yes? Yes, Rupesh, you have attended. You know these concepts, right? Others? Abhinav? Abhinav is not here. Who else is here? Not sure. Bibin? If you are not answering, I will assume you are not here. Okay, and I will mark absent. So basically, in case of in-order traversal, this is the order of visiting the binary tree. It is like left, first visit the left child, then the root, and then the right child. Okay, this is root, I will call it as RT, then the right child. So if the traversal order is like this, then it is called as in-order traversal. In case of pre-order traversal, what we do in the sense, first we visit root, then the left child, and then the right child. If you follow this ordering scheme, then that is called as pre-order traversal. In case of post-order traversal, what we do is left, right, and then root. Okay, so that is called as post-order traversal. So if you traverse this tree in order, first you have to go for left. So you see whether they start with the root node. This is the leftmost child? No. Does it have any left child? Yes. So go here. So this is the leftmost? No. Does it have a left child? Yes. So go to here. So is this has any further left child? No. So visit it. So D. Okay. So after left, what you have to do? Root. So after left, you have to go to root. So go back here. So this is root of some subtree. So it need not be the root of the entire tree. Is it a root of some subtree? Yes. So it has some subtree D, right? So B, okay, then visit it. Then go to right, but it does not have any right child. Okay, so we cannot go anywhere here. Okay, now go back. Now go to A. Now A is nothing but A is for A. This is the left port. So it means that you have already visited A's left. So it means now you can visit the root. So that is uh, pardon. Wait. Yeah. So in order, what you have to do, you have to follow this particular ordering. First to go to the left subtree, then root, and then the right subtree. Okay. So is there a, so you follow, we'll start from the root node, go to its left, so it's D. So D does not have any further left. Okay, so what you have to do, you have to go first visit D. Okay, uh, then B, actually I think this is not correct, this should be B. Okay, then B, it does not have any right child. Okay, now this entire left you have visited, now it comes A, here it will be A. Okay, again go to C, then go to its left, it does not have any left, so nothing to visit here, so it is something like null. So no left, so the next root should be visited, that is E. Next G. Okay, now this left side of C is visited, so now visit C and then F. Okay, so it is not DAB, DBA, EGCF, right? And for pre-order, what we do in the sense, in case of pre-order, it is root, left and right. Okay, the order is root, left and right. So this is the order. First you visit the root and then the left subtree and the right subtree. So start with A. Is it a root node or is it a root node of any subtree? Yes, visit it. Then B. Is it a root node of some subtree? Yes, visit it. Then go to D. Is it a root node? It's not a root node, but after D, but this is the left one. So for B is left, this you can consider. So visit it. Okay. So now what happens? So if you take B, its root is visited, its left is visited, its right, there is nothing like right. Okay. So if you take A, its root is visited, its left is visited. Now you have to go to its right. Okay. So what is its right? C. Is this a root node? Yes, because it's a root of a some subtree, right? Then go to its left, because after root we have to display the left, right? Then if you see E, is also a root node? Yes, E is also a root. Okay. Then go to its left, there is no left. Now its root is done, then its right should be visited. Okay, so G, right? So this nodes, so this part, if you see, if you take this particular part, its root is visited, its left is visited, then its right should be visited, that is F. So this is the order in which pre-order works: A, B, D, C, E, F, G. Okay. And then post order. So in case of post order, what we do, it is left, right and root. First is visit the left subtree, then the right subtree, and then the root. At last we visit the root node. Okay, so that is called as post order traversal. So here first we have to go to the left end. Okay, so this is a leftmost child? No. Then go here. Is this is the leftmost? No. Is this is the leftmost? Yes. So display it, D. After that we want to visit right. So go to the right child of its parent. There is no right. As there is no right, after right we have to come to parent. So that is root node. So display B. Okay. Now for this particular part, now for considering for root node A, the left part is visited. Next, what should be visited? The right should be visited before visiting the root. So go to the right side. Right side is C. So again, does it have a left child? Yes, E. Okay, but E, does it has a E does it have a left child? No, it does not have a left child. So there is nothing like left here. Okay, so no left. After left we have to go to right. Okay, so as there is no left, we first display right and then the root E. Okay, now for this particular part the left is done, the right should be visited. Okay, that right is what? F and then C. Okay, now the entire tree's left is visited, right is visited, then the root should be visited. So it is E. Okay. So D, B, G, E, F, C, A. D, B, G, E, F. This is F. Okay, F, C, A. So this is the order, right? So these are the some of the way of representing the binary tree. So we call it as compact way of representing binary tree. Okay. So this is called as compact way of representing the binary tree. So we are going to discuss this with one problem. So this is the problem. So I'll just define the problem and then we will stop. The problem is floor planning. So this is basically a problem in VLSI design. Floor planning is a standard problem in VLSI design. Here you are given n circuits. All these are circuits. C1, C2, C3. Some 10 circuits were given. Okay, of different area requirements. We are given the circuits and also we are told the area of how much area each of the circuit will be occupied. Okay, so we have to arrange them in a floor to form a chip layout so that all circuits are placed in a minimum layout. Okay, so the problem is what? So these are the different circuits and these circuits should be arranged in such a way that they should occupy a total of minimum layout area. So this is the problem. So there may be different ways of arranging these circuits. So here it is arranged in one style. Like that there may be multiple ways of arranging this. There may be multiple ways of arranging this in different style. Okay, but how can we identify the minimum solution? So here we are not going to solution. How can we represent this using tree encoding technique, right? So this is, for example, this is one way of arranging. So how can we represent this using tree encoding technique? So this can be represented using tree encoding technique. So that's what we are going to discuss, right? But we will see that in the next class. So these are the 4 encoding schemes. Okay, binary encoding, real encoding, order encoding, and tree encoding.